Traditionally, the Three of Swords is an indication to let go of past pain and hurts. The Three of Swords. And you see these swords cutting through the heart. And you can immediately consider they're cutting through. The ideas are the concepts, the crusades, the campaigns. They are piercing the emotional center. And one thing that can come to mind with this is when you see people behaving in a way that you judge. Often, if not always, it's a fear that you could be the same as them. And this may have to do with their physical attributes, their behavior, their beliefs. If you didn't think there was any chance that you would be like them, it probably wouldn't bother you. Just be that person doing that thing. So one thing that triggers me, I think, is when I see spiritual ideas being used to promote egoic purposes. Basically, the person on stage or in the video proclaims that they are a success and then throws some spiritual language at you and then tries to get you to give them money so that you can be like them. And then, if they're lucky, they have a bunch of people around them who they have, quote, helped, close quote. And those are serving as testimonials, and you can join that elite. Wu Wei, Taoism, is the exact opposite. You don't want anyone to see who's great. You don't want to advance the cause of the ego. You want to set aside personal will. And that is why I speak so often of the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Vow of poverty, just don't chase money, or don't worry about money. And if you do, which is likely to happen in our world, you forgive yourself and remember the vow of obedience. Same thing with chastity, which is any kind of sensual pleasure. Don't chase it. But because we're human beings, we're going to chase it. And then we want to forgive that and recommit to the vow of obedience. What is the vow of obedience? In my view, the vow of obedience is making this moment about this moment. The mythology that I operate, or seek to operate with, is that we're sent here to make this moment about this moment, to experience this moment as it is without commentary or judgment. If we don't have unconditional self-approval, unconditional positive self-regard, and if we have a need to know or think we know something, then we're not going to make this moment about this moment. So that's how we support ourselves. And that's how breaking the vows helps us. And that's how seeing these examples of people who trigger us remind us that we're in the mind. Because you can be in the mind all day, but until someone comes along who triggers you by doing something that you don't like, or representing something you don't like, you may never notice that you're lost in the mind. You've failed to make this moment about this moment. And so these people, as irritating as they are to you, and everyone's got different triggers, often linked to their Enneagram, are teachers in what not to do. Everything they're saying, you do the opposite. If they proclaim that they are great, you don't proclaim you're great. If they tell you the way to happiness is to do X, Y, and Z, you realize the way to happiness is to let go of the need for X, Y, and Z. They're reverse teachers. And their voices are very loud in our society. People who are talking about Wu Wei, Taoism, surrender, and my version of the vows, I would say, are not being heard. People who talk about the vows as a more punitive way, or as a way for ego enhancement, or ego identity, or image, they're a little bit louder. Not as loud as they were a few hundred years ago. But really what's loud now is the push to violate those vows. To say that it's somehow spiritual to put all of your attention on getting something that your dreams tell you you want. It's very seductive, so money flows to that. But for me, the opportunity is to see them as a shiny, bright beacon of what not to do. Like a big warning sign in the sky. Look, see how how easily people and parts of you, parts in you, are seduced into that kind of behavior, that kind of way of thinking. And all of this is based on an idea about separation. And often, if not always, to alleviate past trauma. If we felt love was not available or conditional, we look to the society, the static masculine, the structures to tell us, well, how can I prove I'm worthy? How can I get love and attention? How can I appear to be useful? And that may be a necessary procedure to get us out of destruction and uselessness. But it's like a hot potato. You want to get rid of that quickly, that need to be useful, that belief that you are useful, the pride that comes from being useful. I know this sounds crazy because our society is all about being useful. Arnold Schwarzenegger even has a book about appearing to be useful, instead of what I think is a deeper idea, which is to surrender, integrate being useful and useless in a heart center. So we can say these three swords are: one is the sword of destruction, one is the sword of feeling useless, and one is the sword of wanting to be or believing you are useful. And these are piercing the heart. And what calls to the heart is to be something beyond that paradigm of needing to prove worthiness or usefulness, or needing to prove that there is no worthiness or usefulness. That's all mind games, all based in separation and the desire for conditional love. Ideas don't want unconditional love, because then there's no room for new ideas, strategies, plans, judgments, regrets, guilt, grasping. No room for it if you have unconditional positive self-regard. And so the society is going call, trial, return, Bardo. They're called to the trial to prove their worth, attached to an image, an agenda, typically around the vows of poverty and chastity, and not making this moment about this moment, fearing a return to the Bardo. Totally understandable, given that we don't know what the Bardo is. We don't know what death is. We don't know what infinity is. But if we're called to the Bardo and willing to return to the trial, maybe we can take out those three swords: the sword of destructiveness, the sword of uselessness, and the sword of being useful.